Great. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us on this warm Thursday afternoon. My name is Kimberly Olson, and I am the Executive Director of the New York City Arts and Education Roundtable. I'm calling in today from Long Island City, Queens. For those of you that were asking, that was Miles Davis and John Coltrane. Thanks, Amanda, our facilitator, for the suggestion. Happy to pop in the album on the chat as well afterwards. With that, it's my great pleasure to welcome you to today's summer school workshop. The summer school program is hosted by the New York City Arts and Education Roundtable. We are a grassroots service organization right here in New York City working to improve and advance the state of arts education through professional development, advocacy, and information and resource sharing as well. I wish to acknowledge that the Roundtable is thrilled to offer the Summer School Series as a free weekly digital learning series now through August 27th. We, in fact, just added a new workshop earlier this week, so please be sure to check out our website. But we were able to do this made in large part due to the generosity of the New York Community Trust. So thank you to them for their support of the Roundtable and this program. A few housekeeping notes. If you're having trouble with Zoom, please refer to the one sheet that was forwarded to you with the login information for today's call. A reminder to please keep yourself on mute when you are not speaking so that it is clearer to hear the facilitators. This call will include closed captioning. To activate this setting, please click the little arrow next to the closed captioning button and select Show Subtitles. In that same menu is the subtitles setting where you can adjust the size of the captions as well. Let's see. This session will be using the chat box. We highly encourage you to use that as a resource, as you already have, to connect with other community members, share resources, ask questions. We will be saving this chat box as well and sharing it with our community afterwards. Speaking of that, the session itself will also be recorded. We will aggregate any resources that come up and share those along with a recording of the session, as well as a copy of the chat box in an email to everyone on the call and everyone registered in about 3 days, within 3 days rather, of the session happening. With that, I'm going to turn things over to today's fabulous facilitators. We have with us Amanda Adams-Louis and Danilo Coleman. So take it away, Amanda and Danilo.
Hi, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everybody, depending on your time zone. Welcome and thank you for joining us. It's an honor and a pleasure to be facilitating this workshop. I'm a teaching artist and program coordinator with a few organizations here in New York City. I've been using Google Classroom for the past 3 years with in-class, during the school day, arts integration residencies, after-school programming, and then for the 2 advanced teen enrichment art programs I run locally. Danilo.
Thanks, Amanda. Hi, I'm Danilo. Thanks for having me as well. I'm excited to do this. I'm a filmmaker and musician. I've been a teaching artist for about 10 years, mostly in digital media. I teach filmmaking, animation, podcasting, and other things of that nature. I started using Google Classroom once the shutdown hit to do a stop motion animation course with students in IS 75 in Staten Island. That's about it. So, should we get started? You good with that, Amanda?
Yeah, let's go.
All right, cool. So I'm going to share my screen and we'll go from there. Okay. So just as a kind of overview of what Google Classroom is, what you're going to be using it for, it's really a management system instead of a teaching system. You won't be using Classroom to do any live teaching like in Zoom or real-time sharing like Flipgrid. Instead, it really works best as a central hub to collect and assign work, message your students, post any announcements that you want them to see, and schedule any live sessions or meetings you'd like to do with them. It also is really easy to integrate with other elements of the Google Suite, like Google Slides, Google Forms, or Google Drive. So that makes it really easy to integrate with some of those other programs. And although a lot of us were forced into using it, like I, for instance, right, I think it could be a really valuable resource when we return to classes as well. As Amanda mentioned, right, she's been using it for 3 years to supplement the teaching they do in the classroom, and it could kind of either provide a jumping off point for students who are interested in those art forms to further delve into it at home, or it can provide kind of a, you know, assignments for them to look back on as well. Amanda, you wanted to say something?
It's also a really great way to sort of model and show the teaching process to your students and model really good organizational habits, and getting their sort of file management and digital lives together, because our young people are emerging into, you know, the 21st century, and the world is lived digitally. So I think teaching young people and showing them through things like Google Classroom, this is how you organize a lot of information, this is how you share it, and this is also a process that works well on the student end, as you'll see when Danilo demonstrates the student portion of Google Classroom.
Totally. So with that all in mind, let's get started. So to start, to access Google Classroom, to find it, I'm here in my Google homepage. I'm logged in to my email, and to access it, I can click this little menu tab with all the Google apps in it and scroll down until I find it. This is what the icon looks like. If you're having trouble finding that for whatever reason, you can also just click into your browser classroom.google.com, and that will bring you in there as well. To create a class, you're going to click this plus button at the top right of the screen, and you'll see you get the option to either join an existing class or to create a class. Now, an important note here for administrators, right? If you're creating entirely new Google Classroom for your school and you don't have any infrastructure already, you're going to need to create a G Suite for education for your school, or any other G Suite, right? The account itself is free, but you'll have to pay for a domain name. And that process is pretty easy. Google will walk you through it. But after you create your G Suite, you're going to need to manually enter all student and teacher names and create any classrooms within that suite. If you already have a domain for your organization, if you already have a suite that isn't the education suite, you can use that as well. But the point is that for that large amount of kids, especially if you're working in a school, you're going to need some kind of G Suite. And Google Classroom really works best with gmail.com email addresses, right? It doesn't always integrate well with outside email addresses. So this will let you kind of skip that step anyway, because you'll have all of your students will have a gmail.com address. For today's purposes, since we're not doing that, I'm just going to click that I've read and understand the above notice. I'm not using a classroom at a school with students, and click continue. When I do, you see I have the option to create my class name, section, subject, and room. I will call this Intro to Animation. Just keep it in my wheelhouse. Create digital media as the subject, and I'll give it 404 as the room. And then once that's all in, I press create, and automatically that Google Classroom will be created, and I'll get put right into that classroom, as you'll see. So here it looks, right? So the first step is to kind of understand the navigation of this page, right? This is your main screen, and there's 4 tabs as well as the main menu. So to your left here, if you click this little 3 lines, that brings you to a main menu that will show you whatever classes you're in. It'll show you your calendar that you have attached to your classroom. Here it'll show the 2 classes that I'm involved in right next to each other, the settings, as well as any classes I've saved under archived classes. When you start to have more assignments, you can also click this To Review button, and that will show you any assignments that you've handed in and what you need to do about them, who's turned them in, who hasn't, etc. We'll talk a little bit about that more later. The other tabs, the 4 main tabs that you're going to be working with here are the stream. This is kind of like a Facebook wall. Every time an assignment is posted, it will automatically go on the stream. You can also add in different announcements. in the stream. Amanda is going to talk about that in more detail. Second, you have the classwork. This is where all assignments will live, as well as any topics within the classroom. You have people. This is where you'll see all your student names and all your teacher names. And then finally, you have grades, which will show you what your grades are for every assignment, and then you can input those into your gradebook. Lastly is the settings button here at the top right. Amanda is going to cover that a little bit more extensively when we talk about the stream. Okay, so that's your basic overview of how to navigate the 4 different tabs. Once you have your classroom established, the first thing you're going to want to do, oh, I'm sorry, did I hear somebody in there? No. What's the first thing you're going to want to do is, sorry, Kimberly? Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, this is Kim from the Roundtable. Would you be able to slow down just a little bit? This is all such awesome information, and I think people are absorbing it, is what I'm seeing.
Sure. I will slow it down.
Thanks so much.
I'm also going to go deeper. We're going to go deeper into each of these tabs. So this was just kind of an overview of everything, right? Here at the left, the main menu. Everything else is a separate tab. So I'm starting by looking at the stream here. Once you have your classroom established, like we do here, the first thing you're going to need to do is add any students and teachers to your classroom, right? There's 2 different ways to add students to your classroom. The first way is when you are on the Stream tab, you'll see at the top left of the banner on the Stream tab, there's a class code, and you can click that to see it larger, like so. When you share that code with your students, they will be able to enter it when choosing to join a class, and they will automatically get put into your Google Classroom. So for instance, remember at the beginning when we went to the homepage of Google Classroom and I clicked the plus button here at the top right, if a student clicks join class instead of create class, they'll be asked to enter that code. You can share that code in email, send it to them directly, and once they click that, they'll be automatically put into your classroom. The other way to add students in is to click the People tab and manually add them in. To do so, just click the person with the plus icon right here, and then you will be able to add emails individually. If I had a G Suite account, I would also see the option to add guardians or parents for each student in here. You don't see that right here, but right to the right of any student names, that option would appear as well. And you would similarly just click that and add any emails for guardians or parents.
Danilo, we have one quick clarifying question from Jessica asking, does the word class imply a group of students or a session?
So a class, for instance, in my experience, this would be a class of, let's say, 20, 30 students who are already in a class with a classroom teacher, and I'd be coming in to that class, right? That's kind of how we have worked with it, as if it's like a unit, right? A one specific subject. And for those teaching artists, many of us who have used it enter into an already established Google Classroom. So for instance, a classroom teacher, a science teacher, for instance, is the example we're using here, will have their 30 students. And then we push in, similarly to how we would push in with a regular class, and add in our lessons to supplement the work that they're doing. Does that kind of answer it? Cool. going back to the People tab, once you have all your students in, you can add teachers by clicking on that same icon, but make a note, the teachers cannot join using the code. Teachers need to be manually added by the person who created the classroom or by another teacher that is already in the classroom. When you invite that teacher, they will receive an email and they will get the option to join the classroom, like so. Another note, any teachers that join a Google Classroom will automatically have access to the Google Drive folder that is created when a Google Classroom is created, right? So you'll be able to see all the assignments in that folder. You'll be able to see whatever work students turn in automatically. Students will not have access to that folder unless you change your sharing permissions. But I think you would probably want to keep that just for the teachers most of the time, right? All right. Once you have all your teachers and students in, we're going to move over to the Classwork tab. That is right to the left of People. And this is where all assignments would be organized, right? In the example that I'm going to demonstrate here, I'm, like I said, going to model as if I was a teaching artist coming into a science class that is already happening, right? So they've got their lessons here, and I need to create a different subsection for where all my lessons will be. So the first thing that I'll want to do is create kind of a subsection, or in Google Classroom, we call it a topic. So to do so, I'm going to click that plus button at the top, and you'll see various options for what you can create. I'm going to choose the bottom one, which is called the topic. And this is just kind of a subsection organizing option. I'm going to click that. I'm going to call my topic Animation Lessons and add it. And now you'll see you have the science lessons here and my topic here ready to have assignments put into it. You can also move things around in this view by clicking and dragging. So for example, I could move assignments from the science class into the animation class by clicking and dragging, or I could move around entire sections as well and topics, right? You'll also notice what I mentioned before, the class drive folder is here at the top right. So in that folder, you'll see all the assignments as well as all work that students have submitted in here, right? And only teachers have access to that. We will talk about that a little more later as well. So now that we have an understanding of the topics, the first thing you're going to want to do is create your first assignment, right? So to do so, again, you can click Create, and instead of choosing topic now, I'm going to choose one of these options. So you'll see you have 5 different options there. An assignment, which is exactly like it sounds, something that you are assigning your students to do. A quiz assignment, which will automatically put in a form, which you can set up like a quiz for your students. A question, which is like a prompt that you may ask your students. And material, which is resources, right? When I did my class, I created a separate topic for all my resources. And I would put resource sheets there, maybe links to movies, etc., that they could go into, but not get confused with the assignments themselves. For today, I'm just going to make a simple assignment. And to do so, I click, and this is the window that I will see. All right, so for this assignment, one good kind of practice, good practice is to number your assignments just for your own state of mind. So I'm going to call this number 1. I'm going to call it animation lesson 1. And then in the instructions, I could add whatever I would like. I'm going to keep this pretty brief. Survey and take a look at the assignment. You can add whatever you would like in there. But as you'll notice, right, these are just kind of written instructions. If you want to add any assets like Google Slides, Google Forms, anything, any movies to this assignment, you'll do so with these 2 buttons on the bottom. Now, your first option is to create them in the assignment itself, right? So to do that, you would press this plus button, and then you could add in a Google Doc or a Google Slide, form, drawing, or sheet. If I click this, you'll see that it will attach automatically to the assignment, and a new tab will open where I can edit this. If you do it this way, if you click create within the assignment, it will automatically also get put into the Google Drive folder that we looked at before, right? So it'll kind of actively organize stuff for you. However, in my case, I pre-made a lot of these, right? So I made the Google Slides on my own, and I would actually add them in. So in that case, it won't move them in directly. You're going to have to keep track of how you organize stuff, right? So I would not do it. I didn't do it this way, but you totally can. Instead, I pre-made stuff in my different Google apps, and then I clicked add to the left of the create button. Now you'll see you get the option to upload a file from your computer. You can add a link to something online. You can even add a YouTube video that will embed directly into the assignment, or you can import any previously made assets. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to click Google Drive. I'm going to find the assets that I am looking for. In this case, it is a form, which is like a student survey, and a slide that is my first lesson. I like to include a survey at the very beginning to get a sense of what my students have in terms of technology, their background experience, etc. I'm going to just really briefly show you what the format of those 2 things look like. For instance,
Hey, Danilo. Sorry to interrupt. It's Kim from the roundtable again. Before you do, a question came in the chat asking, couldn't we just add the link in the assignment too?
So the link, you mean this link, like a link, that would bring you to a web page, right? You could, yes, you definitely, you can, oh, I see what you mean. And then in the instructions themselves. Is that what you mean, Kimberly?
I'm not sure. This is from Carol Hurd Rodriguez. If you're able to, oh, Carol said yes.
Yeah, totally. You could do it that way. Either is fine. The only difference is how it will look in terms of formatting. If you include the link in the instructions themselves, it'll appear in that text box. Whereas if you add it as a link below, like this, it will have its own kind of window, right? It'll look a little bit prettier, I would say, you know. Just was going to briefly show you a couple examples of what I did. My student survey I made using Google Forms. Ask a couple of questions. What technology do you have at home, etc. Once I submit that and assign it, I can see my student responses by clicking on the Responses tab. Obviously, I have none yet. My lesson itself was a Google slide, which is basically like a PowerPoint in which I added written instructions for my assignment and also embedded a video of me explaining the assignment in order to have both for students to access it both visually and through text, whatever is easiest for them. Again, you have multiple options like Carol mentioned. I could add the video as its own asset if I wanted to do that. This is just one option, right? Now, before I submit, though, importantly, I want to point out this tab, right? The students can view file. So when it says students can view file, that means that this one slide is the same slide that all students are seeing, but they cannot edit it. They can only look at it, right? In this case, for that lesson, that was fitting because all I needed them to do was follow instructions. However, if we are doing some kind of collaborative Google Doc, I can change it to students can edit file. Now that means that every student will be able to go in and adjust the text, the images on that slide that I included. And the last option is to make a copy for each student. So for instance, if you wanted every student to fill out their own individual answer in the slide you create, this would automatically make 30, right, however many students you have in your class. It would make a copy for every single student to receive. So this is really helpful if you're doing something where you want them to fill out answers or something like that. If you just want them to look at it, you can just leave it as students can view file.
Hey, Danilo, do you also have to adjust the share permissions on the slides themselves?
Now, if you're just having them view it, you definitely do not. I didn't do them with editing the file. I haven't done a shared doc like that.
I can jump in here and answer that
Yeah,
question.
go ahead. Go ahead.
So if you are sharing documents or PowerPoints with students who are already registered members of the class, Google automatically creates a class group that gives a general batch set of permissions to all of the students that are registered that have joined the class through the class code to all materials that are submitted or shared with them on Google Drive. On Google Classroom, excuse me. So if the students are already in the class and you create a PowerPoint or you add a PowerPoint for them to view or to modify, yes, they automatically are given permissions. The reverse, though, is not always the case, and I'll get into that a little bit more when I get into Stream because it doesn't really relate to assignments per se.
Right. Thank you, Amanda. Yeah, I'm gonna I just want to show a couple other things in the classwork thing, and then I'm going to pass it to Amanda. Last steps is once you have all this set the way you want to make sure to put it under the topic that is fitting. In this case, it is an animation lesson. I'm going to click there. You want to set your due date. I'm going to put it for a week from now. And lastly, you can save this as a draft, in which case no students will see it, but it will remain on your Google Classroom for you to access. You can schedule it and give it a specific time and day to appear on the stream, or you can assign it directly, in which case it will pop up on the stream. Everyone will see it as soon as you press that. And the last part is the points. And this is where I'm going to pass it to Amanda to talk a little bit more about grading and the stream.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm just going to share my screen. Give me a moment. All right. So can everybody see my screen? Okay. Yes, thank you. That's helpful. All right, so I am in the same Google Classroom that Danilo was using. And I'm going to go to open up the assignment. So I'm using a graded example. because there's a kind of a difference between assignments in Google Classroom that are graded and that are not graded. So the first thing you want to determine, and just a quick note about my portion for the stream and for grading, I see that the majority of administrators and teaching artists in our grading needs are a little bit different than those of classroom teachers that do have to submit grades to schools for report cards and that sort of thing. So I'm going to mainly be covering grading, just a note to everybody, in the context of being an arts education administrator working at a CBO or a museum or an arts council or what have you, or being a teaching artist using the grading feature to view and access your student work and see that they completed it and check for completion, but not necessarily to assign numerical grades. Quick note, if you do, you want to make sure that you have points. If you do not want to assign numerical grading, it's a lot easier just for your own workflow and your students' workflow that you click ungraded on the assignment. And once you do that, you want to save it. Once an assignment has been published and you select ungraded, Google Classroom unfortunately does not allow you to go back and then change that assignment to a graded assignment. In that case, you'd have to create a new one. So I'm going to leave it, and it's not even letting me do that now. So I'm going to update it. All right, so the first thing I wanted to go through was the settings bar. Are there any immediates? All right, cool. So in the settings bar, that allows you the settings, in the settings portion, and sorry, I know I'm probably going a little bit too quickly, so I'm gonna slow myself down. Once you are in the sort of main area of Google Classroom, these are the 4 tabs up here that you use to navigate, and to modify settings or to access them, you want to navigate to the far right-hand corner and click on this gear toolbox. Once you click that, that opens the settings, and that is where you're able to fill in the classroom information so you can identify your class. And if you are working and you have multiple classes in Google Classroom, this is kind of where you'd indicate which class is which. The settings are sort of formalized for academic classroom teaching, the description of the class, the section for teachers that have multiple classrooms, but that also happens with a lot of us TAs and administrators. And then the room or the area where it's held, and then the subject that's being instructed in that class. And this is also information that will appear to students once they join the Google Classroom. Scrolling down, this is where you have your general information in regards to the general settings in regards to the Google class. You have the class code here, and then you have display, reset. If for some reason your class is compromised, this is where you'd go to reset the class code, so your students or anybody new that wants to join would have to use a new code if your code is distributed or sort of gets lost or messed up. Disable that feature, or if you want to copy it. The rest of these features refer to the stream, and the stream is kind of like a Facebook wall or sort of the main page of Twitter. It's like a virtual bulletin board for your class, and that's a good place to post updates, announcements, any sort of, if there's a change or a shift in something that you want your students to know really quickly, interesting articles or resources, and that's kind of the best place for the stream. And I'm actually going to zoom out of here and show you an example of a stream, so everybody has a sense of what I mean. So here, this is actually an actual class that I led this spring, and here is an example, wrong class, sorry, I use it for a lot of classes. So here's another class that I did also lead this spring, and here, we use the stream to make announcements, to share opportunities with teens, open calls, grants, different articles that we felt would be inspiring to them, references. We did visits with artists, so this was just a reminder for students to read about artists before they came to visit us so they could ask them informed questions. So that's sort of an example of like an update. Here's another opportunity for students to join a Brooklyn Museum public event for teens. that we shared with students a bit beforehand. And the stream also, as you guys can see in this area right here, announces when you update or post a new material or a new assignment for your students. More kind of examples. And then also, as you see right here, on the stream, you are allowed to sort of post links, and like the assignment feature that Danilo just demonstrated, you can edit each of your posts on the stream. You can right here determine who sees it, if it's just for particular students, or if it's just for the guardians, and you have a bunch of parents and guardians that are also on their children's Google Classroom that you manage. This might be a way to make an announcement for them. So this is the description area. And then here where your links appear, if you want to add more links or modify a link that you already added, you'd go to add here to add a new link. And again, you can add information from your Google Drive, URL links from the web, files from your computer or flash drive or an external hard drive, and also direct videos from YouTube. Again, you always want to make sure that you're saving any updates that you make, and you do that here with the save button. So this is the stream. Students are able to interact with this as well. And then to type in a new post, you go to the top and you click on it, similar to Facebook for those of you that use Facebook, and you type your post. So sample post. If I wanted to add a material, I'd click here, and then I'd add the material that I wanted. And like a lot of other things on Google Classroom, you have the option, if you click the downward arrow, to post the post after you've typed it, or you can schedule it for a later date, or you can save it as a draft if you want to think about it and revise it. So I'm going to click Save as Draft and leave that at the top. And it will be visible right here to you. It will not be visible to your students. If you do have upcoming assignments, you'll notice that you can see them here. And if you have a logo or a banner for your organization, or like a group photo of the class that you kind of want to share with students or have them see, or an inspirational photo, you can upload it right here. So you click Upload Photo, and then you're able to either drag a photo, upload a photo from your computer. I'm going to pause and see, are there any immediate questions? Nope. All right, so that's a stream. And now I'm going to navigate back to settings and show you how to manage the stream settings. I kind of did the flip-flop because I thought it'd be easier to navigate the stream settings once we kind of got a look at the stream itself.
Hey, Amanda, a question just came in. Can you show how to use the link button?
On the stream?
Simone, if you want to clarify.
Yeah, anywhere. Yes, on the stream is great.
Sure, I'll be happy to. Let me create an example. All right. So I am navigating to Instagram. Let's say I want to share this link with my students. I navigate to the website, I copy the link, I'm pressing Command-C because I'm on a Mac in this case. And then actually, let me go to my save draft. So I'm in my save draft, and then I click Add, and then I click on Link, and then I Command-C, Command-V, paste the link that I just copied from the Instagram page into that field, and I click Add Link. And now the link's added to the post. Does that answer your question?
Yes, she said thank you.
Cool. And then would it help for me to do a demo from Google Drive or other sources or YouTube?
I'm not seeing anybody nodding yes or in the.
Okay.
So
All right. I'm going to move on to settings. All right, so now that we're in settings, you can sort of name and modify and identify your class here. And let me move my computer screen up. And then under the general area, you are able to sort of modify your stream settings. So right here, it says stream, and this allows you to determine how students are able to or not able to interact with stream. So up here, students can post and comment, students can only comment, or only teachers can post and comment. So depending on your class, administrator, school settings, you would modify it as necessary for your particular situation. And then classwork on stream. This shows how classwork is displayed on the stream. So in my case, the way that you saw it for the Q-Teen Collective, we selected show condensed notifications. So that's just a general summary. Hey, it's been posted. You can also show attachments and details, which are any links, videos, or any sort of resources that you've attached to the assignment. And then also the details of the description or the instructions associated with that assignment. And then this is your choice to show deleted items if you've deleted items. I'm going to start my portion, sort of transition to grading here. Are there any final questions about the stream before I go into grading? Like any quick?
Yes. Is there a way to stop students from reposting work and stop very late posting of work?
On the stream or in terms of assignments? Because it depends. If you're using the stream to have students post work, there's no way to sort of control when they do or how they do on the stream, but there is a way to do that in assignments.
It turns out for assignments.
Sorry.
Oh, I didn't hear you. I'm sorry. It was a little muffled.
Sorry, it's my computer. For assignments.
Okay, so could you just repeat your full question to me, Carol?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you. So I have had trouble with students who continuously repost work.
Oh, I'm sorry. Your sound just went out. I can't.
Carol, we've lost you a little bit. So how about you put your question in the chat in full, and then we have ample time blocked off at the end that we'll return to it. Yeah, because I think we've lost your sound. So we'll keep going for now. Thanks, Carol.
There's one more quick question I think that you can answer, Amanda. If you set it so that students are not able to comment on the stream, does that also apply to them being able to comment in classwork, class comments?
No, that's just a stream.
Thank you.
They can still comment on assignments. All right, so, I think if you set up a Google Class, after you sort of set it up and you've determined how you want students to interact or not with the stream, and you've named and labeled the class, and this again is really for teaching artists and sort of non-academic teachers that are working in alternative freelance capacities with students, schools, young people, because grading is very different for DOE teachers, and that's its own separate topic and website because there are sort of complex workflows associated with that, which is why it's not being covered. If you did come looking for it, I really sincerely apologize. We just didn't have the time to fit that in with the rest of the material we're covering today. If you're interested in something like that, please reach out and let the roundtable know. All right, so grading. First, this is grading calculation. This sort of determines how throughout the entire Google Classroom, do you want to calculate grades at all? Or not. So if you know you don't want to use it for that, then you would just click no overall grade. If you know that you do, either for your own reference or to just give the students an idea, and it's just sort of in Google Classroom, and you don't have to sort of export it to like a Scadula or a DOE system to then be put in a report card. And then also sort of the same for people that are working at the higher education level at CUNYs and SUNYs and other universities that have their own specific grading report card systems. you can set either total points or weighted by categories. If you select weighted by category, then you would set up categories. So in the sort of artistic world, I'm a visual artist, and I work in the space of arts education, so I'm going to relate it to that. If you want to set a series of criteria for your students in terms of the form or the shape, or with performing arts, you know, the movement and the sort of interplay between the way that if students are doing like dance, with the music selection, the execution, the performance, and that sort of thing, or if you're doing visual arts in terms of the materials, the media, the ability to revise and sort of show progress and growth, to give students a general sense of how you will be evaluating your work, this is the area you'd want to do that. So I'm going to set it to no overall grade. And since there's no changes, saved as grayed out. And I am going to actually navigate to the grades tab. So these are the four main tabs, and grades is the last one, clicking on it here. And even if you're not doing formal grading, I think this tab is very useful to get a sense of students turning in work or not, and submitting it or not. So as you guys will see, this is my students' work. I think there are like 18 students in the program, and this is the different assignments that we assign them from the program, and whether they turned it in, whether it was late or on time or what have you. So you get a sense, and things that are turned in are in green, things that are missing are in red. Any questions so far?
Yeah, there's a question. I had students turn in work with no attachments and not completing the Google form. Is there a way to prevent that?
There's no way to prevent it, but there is a way to respond to it. So what you can do is right here. So let's say Anna M. Anna M turned in her documentation homework, but it wasn't completed to the standards, or it was missing a piece, like an attachment. I can click return assignment, and that returns assignment to the student. And I can also include, when I click on return assignment, I get this pop-up. So student return one work to student confirming. And then also right here, if they are missing an item, this is where you can indicate to them or remind them. And, you know, of course, we as teachers are kind of broken records, and repeat yourself and sort of indicate the criteria and say, you know, hey, this is missing this doc, or you didn't give me your rubric, or, you know, where's your bibliography? Could you please submit X, Y, Z, ABC? Does that make sense? So I would say,
also, Amanda, I'm also going to show a little bit what it looks like from the student side right after this. So you'll see how comments go back and forth as well.
Okay, cool. Thank you for adding that. Thank you for the reminder. So this is, it's a long story, but we had to extend things for Rona. So this is actually an existing student in an existing class that's live. So I'm not going to press return because I don't want her to be confused. So I'm clicking cancel, but that's how you'd go through the process of indicating to a student that their work is either incomplete or missing an element. And this is just a quick snapshot overview. And then when you click on the tab here, you can also view the work itself. So I just showed you the return function. Let me show you the view submission. So I'm going to click on this, and it's going to actually take me to the student submission. So in this case, this is an artist statement that I asked students to write. So here's the assignment that I created. And this was actually the sort of default template instructions and text I put in. I used the create a copy for every student. So this is this student's copy for you guys to get a sense of what it looks like. And then if you have any other collaborators, this is one of my colleagues who actually spell checked it and did a copy edit. They also can access and copy and comment on this. If you want to add a private comment to a student, this is also where you can add a private comment to a student if you want to commend them or remind them, all of the different ways and reasons we comment on students' work. You can sort of do them here. You can also see the files. You can see the history. And then for those of you that need to track students' work to sort of cut off deadlines, to create a boundary or to enforce a deadline, here is where you can get your information. for when they turned it in, if they unsubmitted, as you see she did, and then returned it in again. So that sort of, I find for us teaching artists, it can be very helpful to kind of review and assess and get a sense of, okay, this student is working, you know, in line with the parameter set. You know, this student I might need to coach or support a little bit in terms of turning in past assignments and what have you. So up here, if you want to navigate between student work as you're viewing their work, you can click on a student's name and then navigate to their assignment. Just a quick little trick that I use when I'm reviewing a bunch of written tables. So this is another student that also completed the statement assignment. And then again, if you also, another way to return student work while you're viewing it is to press the return button that's right up here. So if you want to return multiple work, you can click multiple pieces of the student's work, multiple submissions, or just this submission. So that allows you sort of more of a targeted return if that is something that you need to access or use. And
Amanda, Lisa's asked, can you show that shortcut again for going between the students' work one more time?
oh, sure, I'd be happy to. So to get to that shortcut, you want to navigate to the upper left-hand corner and click this downward arrow here, and then you click on the student whose work you want to navigate to. So let's say I want to go to Anya Drukolovich's work. I'm going to click on her name, and then Google Classroom is going to navigate me to her work. As you all see there, I teach a few little Marxists. There's still hope for the future. So here's everybody's work in the class, regardless of whether they turned it in or not. If you want to check the status and label or organize them by status, these are the organization tools. First name, last name, status.
Another quick question, if you do return a student's work to them, are you still able to access it? Or are you only able to access it after they return it back to you?
You are able to, you're able to access the copy they sent you, but you're not able to see modifications until they resubmit them to you. All right, so I did grading, stream, classrooms. Oh, I wanted to show everybody a quick example. If you do choose to grade or do grading, and it's just kind of for yourself or for your students, and it's not something that needs to be transferred to a report card system, the quick, easy, dirty way to do grading because it's already submitted. Right. This is the graded one. This was just, oh, because we set this class to non-graded. So I'm going to change it back to total points. I'm going to click save. And that should remedy it. All right, this is a little bit of a snafu that I will figure out. And actually, I think now would be a good time to transition back to Danilo and the student perspective.
Okay, cool.
I'm gonna stop my share.
Yeah, so I was going to show kind of behind the curtain what it looks like for your students when you send them an assignment and then how they send it to you. And I was going to kind of go back and forth a little bit briefly. And this addresses a little bit, I think, what you're asking of how do you add in videos and stuff like that. So let me see if that answers that question for you. So for instance, I am back on my teacher account and I'm pretending I'm the science teacher, just go with it. And you'll see when I click any assignment on the Classwork tab, it expands and it shows me who's turned it in, and if they haven't turned it in, but the due date hasn't passed, who has assigned it, right? So I can click View Assignment, and now I see this kind of summation of who's turned it in. Bernie Berman has turned it in. Susie Berman has not yet turned it in. And I can actually click and see their assignments themselves as well. So for instance, you see if I click here, I can see only the people who have turned it in. Here I can see only the people who have not. And if I click all students, I will see both. So let's say Bernie has turned in his short story. I'm going to click it. I take a look, and I say, okay, this is not long enough, Bernie. I can add in a private comment directly in the doc. Not long enough, Bernie. Obviously, I'm being more curt than I would be with my students. Just go with it again. I can post that. As we mentioned in the chat, private comments will show up immediately. Students will receive an email saying that you've sent them one, and you will receive an email if they send you one. I'm going to say not long enough, Bernie, and then I press return. And you will see that that assignment will go from being turned in eventually, once I reload, to back to being returned, right? So now Bernie has to look over his piece and make adjustments. I'm going to go over this quickly. So now to just pop into what it looks like for the student. So quickly, I'm going to navigate to the student's classroom. So for a student, you see they do not see the grades tab. They do not have any effect on that. They can go on the classwork tab, open up this, see their assignment. Now this is what it looks like for them, right? So they have the Google Doc that they need to edit. And what I did for my stop motion class was had them directly add in their videos on the assignment, which was really helpful and kept it really organized, right? You can press this plus button here, and the student can choose a file from their computer or from their Google Drive and submit that to you directly. They can also reopen that file that we just talked about. They see, okay, he told me I need to add more, and then resubmit. Now in mine, I will again reload, and you will see that I have now got a new one. Bernie has turned in his work again. I can see it. Here it is. Susie has still not gotten to it. That's about it for that part. So I think it would be good with where we're at to start going through some questions. Unless you have anything else, either Kinsey, Kim, or Amanda.
Great, let's jump right into some questions. I'll start with the ones that are most, the two that just popped in the chat, then I'll circle back to what was shared earlier. Eden has asked, sometimes under student work, the assignment has a blue upturned corner. Sometimes it's red. What do those colors mean? Danilo, you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry. Amanda, I'm not sure what those tabs on their own mean. For me, they show up as blue most of the time. Is it possible, Amanda, that it has something to do with grades or?
What section are you talking about? When you're looking at the classwork itself?
I think so. Yeah, that little classwork part.
Eden, if you're able to come off mute or put in the chat.
Sometimes under student work. All right, so when it's blue, that generally means it's been submitted. When it's red, that means it has not been submitted.
You know what? I thought of it. Maybe it shows up as blue there because the due date hasn't passed. And perhaps once the due date has passed, if it still isn't submitted, you would see a little red notch at the bottom corner.
Let's see. Just looking into next questions. When you are reviewing a written assignment and a comment on the written work directly, does the student get an email for each comment, not a posted comment? Does that make sense?
So for private comments, they receive an email for sure, like if you're sending something to them directly. If you make adjustments to the doc that they're using, I feel that they will know that you did something to it, but maybe to be safe, you send them a comment as well, just to say, hey, I marked up your essay. Can you take a look at it?
You can, I'm going to share my screen and show you where you can determine that. So if you go to this side tab in any part of Google Classroom and you scroll down to the bottom and you click on settings for your entire Google Classroom account, all classes included, and you click notifications, if you turn them off, then nobody's getting any email notifications. If you turn them on, then it gives you the option to determine who, when, where, why, how notifications happen. So if students comment on your posts, are you informed? If students make private comments on work, is there an announcement made? Late submission, resubmissions, co-teach invitations, schedule, published posts, failed, and this is kind of in regard to the stream, and then turn email class notifications on or off for class. So this is where you can sort of determine that by class.
Great, thanks, Amanda. So going back a little bit earlier in the session, is it possible to share your domain with a school versus having to invite the students to yours?
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. Is it possible to share your domain with a school versus having to invite the students to yours?
It is possible for you to do that, but the problem that often happens is depending on the tech situation at the school, especially those of you that are working in New York City and working with New York City public schools, that are either under-resourced or have been deemed Title I schools. Often, a lot of those schools do not have techs that are able to manage the school's G Suite account or G Education Suite account, and that would be the person who generally modifies the back-end admin settings for the actual education account so that people are able to join or not join. So for example, if you're a teaching artist and you're working in a school that doesn't have a tech and the accounts have just been set up and people are using them, but nobody knows how to modify the settings, I say that because it's happened to me 5 times, then you're gonna have trouble being able to, even if you give them permission, the students who are under that school's G Suite may not be able to connect with your particular G Suite that you set up because their permissions do not enable them to do it.
In that case, Amanda, what's been your workaround to connecting with your students?
It really depends on the particular situation. If I actually know how to go to the back end of Google Education, so I have in certain cases sat in the principal's office with the principal and the AP over my shoulder and manually changed those settings so that I was able to connect myself when they didn't have a tech because we were desperate. But that's why I say it really, 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 really depends, because that's the level of sort of trust, because they had to log me in and I was, managing and modifying settings for an entire school's Google Classroom. If that's not the case, then sometimes they can create an email account for you, a school email account. What I started actually, the best workaround that I could think of is it happens at the managerial level, and this is sort of a message to arts administrators out there. I would say when you are contracting with schools and when you are putting teaching artists in schools or working with institutions that have their own G-education, negotiate that they have a general either email address or set of email addresses, like a dummy email address for your teaching artists to use to be able to connect to that school's Google Classroom. And that will facilitate at the beginning of the residency, your teachers and your teaching artists and your artist educators being able to connect with that classroom. But I feel like that's something that really needs to happen at the administrative level, because it requires going into an account and changing settings in G Suite Education for outside parties to connect. Just like if you, I work at Queens Art Council, and if I try to email a student that let's say goes to LaGuardia, and LaGuardia's school settings do not allow them to receive emails from anybody that doesn't have nyc.edu.gov or at laguardia.org, then I won't be able to email the students or email class assignments in any capacity. So the workaround for not only being able to integrate into Google Classroom, but also being able to connect with students who have emails that are associated with an educational G Suite, you really want to make sure that you either have an email account within that G Suite domain, or that you're able to get access to the text settings to modify that G Suite domain so that outside people are able to be invited and join in Google Classrooms within that domain. I wish it were an easier, simpler explanation, but it's really advocacy at the administrative level and sort of strategic planning about how teachers in classrooms and teaching artists are going to use Google Classroom and all be admitted access to it.
Great. I'll also share at the roundtable level, we are aware as a service organization and an advocacy organization that this has been an issue for organizations and teaching artists alike. So it is something that we are advocating for within the Department of Education as a way to streamline or have guidance that is created. So helpful to hear that so many people have had issues with this, as it just gives us more information to go with the Department of Education with. Moving on,
Andrea Dishy has a safety question.
Sure.
If that's the case, that should be made, and that should be spoken of and announced in the initial planning meeting for the teaching artist residency, because if that's the case, then the teaching artist is going to have to email the documents or what have you to the classroom teacher, and that puts an additional burden on the classroom teacher to then have to copy, translate, transfer. But if that's a DOE or that school's policy, and it's not a DOE, it's a school policy, because there are schools that allow it and there are schools that don't. That's something that really needs to be negotiated at the beginning of a residency or a contractual engagement for education.
Great. Going back again, is the student survey make copy similar to giving them a Google form type survey? What's the difference?
That's exactly what I used. I used the Google form and then just submitted that. And once it's submitted, students, once they add their responses, I can go in there and see everything.
Great. What would be the best way to share student artworks for reflection time, like do a gallery walk or gallery view?
So I just talked about this, as there's a couple different possibilities. Amanda, you can chime in as well, but I would say the ways that I've done it, there are two ways I've done it. One is I have the student themselves post it on the stream. They can upload a picture onto the stream or a collage, whatever they made. And then on the stream, as long as you make commenting allowed, every student can comment on that post. The other option is to collect all the work yourself as the teaching artist and maybe put it into a slide that's editable by everyone, and then create a little space under each specific work where students could fill in text or add in a text box, whatever it may be. So you basically make a big shared document. I would lean towards the stream. I think the other one will get a little messy, but Amanda, do you have any experience what you've done with having people comment on each other's work?
Yes, I do. I find that the stream is the best way to do it. If the work is being posted on the stream. I am going to share my screen. I run a 6 weeks, I co-teach a 6-week summer program, and we have students complete work on a daily basis. And we actually set up a workflow through Google Photos where we create an assignment, attach a Google photo album, and then we have the students upload work to a Google photo album. During class, we meet on Zoom, we screen share just like I'm doing with you all now, and we show student work. And then there's also a feature where as you go through it, you are able to comment right here. So say something. So we also have students review on occasion each other's work, and if they feel motivated, they are able to comment. And that's another way, if this is for real visual, photo, video, painting, the visual arts, things that are able to sort of take, it's easy to take a picture of, you can upload, and then everybody can sort of scroll through in Google Photos. And this is how we review and have students kind of give each other feedback on their work.
Great. There's also a suggestion in the chat earlier from Keith. What about using Flipgrid? I think which.
Yes, Taylor.
Good, yeah.
Let's see. Are there any third-party apps you've integrated and would recommend?
Good question.
I mean, like I just mentioned, Flipgrid is nice, but it doesn't really integrate directly as much into Google Classroom. Similarly, you know, I've done things where on the stream, I would post a link to a Zoom meeting, for instance. That's something that you could do in the stream. Generally, Google Classroom is the hub that connects all the other pieces, like Amanda was showing. You know, Google Photos, you go out of there, but you have the link to go to it and stuff like that. So it's really however you want to, but Google Classroom itself is almost just like a host, you know?
Great. Another question that came in, is there a way for students to have chats like this during or after class? I'm assuming referencing the chat box.
If you allow students to post on stream, some of my classes I do, they can start an announcement and ask a group a question, or like I'll sometimes have my students post work, like a painting they're working on midway through to get feedback on it and say, hey, I'm working on this, you know, like, are my brights too bright, or is, you know, are the highlights, you know, blown out, or the shadows or the midtones, you know, should I use more blue? And then, you know, please respond in the comments.
In terms of, again, yeah, in terms of live teaching though, right? Again, Google Classroom is not where you're going to be doing live stuff for the most part. So like Amanda said, you're going to have that up for a week and students can respond. But if you want something where people are bouncing off each other constantly, you're going to want to use Zoom or Google Meet or something like, or Flipgrid, right? Those are
Instagram.
Or Instagram, something more real time, exactly. But those are different, you know.
Also a really great program called Grid that is a really wonderful way to share images with young people. And this is more for people that are working in like animation, video, photo, and really kind of image-based art programming, media.
And Jennifer Taylor just mentioned that they found the connection between Classroom and Flipgrid really easy. When you create a grid, you can directly post it to Google Classroom. So if you're looking for something that sounds like it would be a cool option.
Great. So keep the questions coming in the chat. I think one that I saw come in earlier. Can you put an expiration date on a resource?
I answered that one in the chat itself. I would say if you really want the resource to go away, you could always delete it from the Google Drive itself, right? The resources would be that. I mean, that's how I would do it. I would just delete it at a certain date, you know, but keep in mind your students are probably going to be able to screen share it or download it. So.
Great. Those are the questions I saw. Kinsey, did I miss any?
Does anybody need any demos or want to, you know, best practices, how we do things?
Martha has requested, how do you set up the grading grid? And I know it's been said that it sets up automatically, but could you maybe show what that process looks like?
it kind of happens on the, I mean, I can show you the grid for my student work.
You know what, Amanda? I could just assign something and show how it changes. Should I do that really quick?
Yeah, that might help.
Yeah, okay. So for instance, right now we have these 4 assignments. We see that Bernie has turned in this assignment. We see no one's turned in any of these because it's a draft. If I were to make a new assignment, right here, I click create, assignment 5, right? I'm just gonna leave it like that. And I assign it directly, no topic. Once I reload, and I go back to grades, assignment 5 has now gotten added to the grid. If I had put a grade, that would also pop in and I would see the numbers for each student once I grade them. As Amanda said, even if you don't have grades, this is a really great way to see if people are turning stuff in or not, right? So I see that my class has a pretty low engagement level right here, and only 1 assignment has been turned in. And I guess that was one other note I was going to make. Just people were asking of integrating and stuff. And, you know, if there's any way for you to include synchronous elements to your classes, I think that's really good, because when you go solely asynchronous, it gives a lot of students a chance to just kind of fall out and forget about it. So if there's any way to kind of put in like Flipgrid or Zoom meetings and just try to reconnect your students, obviously with permission from the administrators, I would really
Google Hangout is Google's really stepped their game up in terms of integrating Google Hangout with your Google Classroom class. So if you have a Google Classroom class, if it's your computer's updated and Google likes you today, because sometimes updates happen for different people at different times, you should actually in the upper right hand corner of your screen see Google Meet, and that's like a special Google Meet group that you can create for the class that's associated that you're working in.
Is there a file size limit for materials that you post?
I haven't run into that.
And I actually saw that question, and I was, because to my knowledge there isn't one, and I was like checking in, you know, the Google database while Danilo was talking, and there's like a daily upload limit, like maximum you can only upload 750 gigabytes a day.
Yeah, that's not gonna happen.
That's like a quarter exabyte. Like you know, I mean, even people that, you know, teach 100, you know, people deep classes, like they don't do that. Nobody does that. But in terms of individual file size limits, I haven't seen any.
Right. Is there a way to set up a student survey?
I would say Google Forms or SurveyMonkey, and you attach the link to an assignment.
So
or you
like,
can post the link directly to the
like I showed you in the form that I made, right? When you create an assignment, you have the option to create a form directly in there. And so that's how I would push it towards them. Within the assignment, you create a form, create the survey, and submit it as your first assignment. You could also do it later or use it as a quiz or whatever it may be.
Would you mind showing what the question option is and how students respond? Can they record sound responses?
Well, I can show it really quick here. So the question thing would go into the stream. Similar, we click on Classwork, we click Create, question. How was this PD? Boom, that's it, right? I can add points as well. Students, you see you have the option to students can reply to each other, or students can edit their answer. Can change all that stuff. Once I ask, it will pop up under my animation lessons as well in my stream right here. Oops, sorry, didn't want to do that. I just want to expand it. Oh, I guess I can't. So I guess you'd have to open it up there, and then the students would see that question in their stream and they could answer to it. I'm not sure if they can upload on that. Amanda, do you know if they can upload via a question? Like a sound or a video?
They should be able to, but we should go into the student. Once you ask the question, let's hop to the student version, because it should be like a regular assignment where they're able to upload a file, and at which point they could record an MP3 and then upload it in response to that question.
I'm just logging into the student account. Give me one moment.
Great. And while you're doing that, Danilo, any pros or cons, for Amanda, any pros or cons in having the guardians integrated in the class? We will be working with students 2 to 12 years old, so their grown-up will need to help read navigate.
I think it's a great way to include guardians and parents in the learning process and the learning environment, and to give them a firsthand look at how, what, why, your pedagogy, your approach, your philosophy, and you as a teacher, and also just the way that you organize work, the way that you explain things to students. They really get a sense of what their son, daughter are learning in the process.
And our Amanda and Danilo, are you available for further consulting and TA training?
Yes, we are. He laughs, I say yes. Yes, we are. We talked about this. We absolutely are. I'm putting my email in the chat. Danilo put his email in the chat.
Maybe. Okay, so I've opened it up. It doesn't look to me. I'm going to share my screen just so you can see. This is what it looks like for the student on the question. So for instance, we go back to the stream. There's the question I posted. If I click that, you see the student has over here the choice to type their answer. It was okay. And then they could turn it in, right? Whatever it might be. So if you were trying to get files in your question, perhaps instead you would just make a new assignment, right? You could grade it lower, but you would want it that way so that in this little section here, the student would have the option of actually turning in a file as opposed to just a text written response.
Great. Going back. This question may have been answered. For ungraded assignments, when I return work that needs revision, it shows returned just like the completed projects. Is there a way to return ungraded work and keep those that need more work separate from the completed work? I also forget if this was answered, so I apologize.
So you'll see when you start receiving stuff, when you click on the assignment, you should see turned in, not turned in, and returned as 3 different sections. I was trying to understand if you were talking about, like, do you want to keep a version of the first draft and then return it? In which case, maybe you would download the student's first submission, organize it that way, then return it, let them make a second version, right? But theoretically, if you don't have due dates, like we noted in the settings, you can set it up so students cannot submit things late. If you have that turned off and students can submit whenever, you should see those in 3 different categories. So you're saying, Carol, ungraded, returned, all just go together for ungraded work. Yeah, so that might be a situation where in your Google Drive folder, maybe you organize them, right? You just go in and make a secondary folder and kind of move things around. That's probably what I would do.
Great. I think we have just about 1 minute left, so I'm going to pause questions for now, and just a huge thank you to Amanda and Danilo for your incredible work. I hope you're able to scroll through the chat and see just how much love you got during this session. People are really, from what I'm seeing, finding it very helpful. So thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody, for coming out.
Thank you so much.
Just a quick reminder about what's coming up next with the Roundtable. We're going to be continuing our summer school series next Thursday at 4 p.m. with protest poetry, art making, and activism in online spaces, taught by 2 incredible teaching artists again. So please, I hope you'll join us for that. Tomorrow at the Roundtable on July 31st, I believe at 10:30, we are going to be hosting NYC AIER in solidarity. The Roundtable has been hosting affinity groups, racial affinity groups, over the past 2 months as we work as a community and field to actively dismantle racism and oppression within our field and beyond. So we hope you'll join us for that. All 3 racial affinity groups will be coming together in what will be a lovely informal discussion with some action steps created from that. And additionally, you may have seen this if you're on our mailing list or our social media. The Roundtable is thrilled to announce that we will have created an Arts Educator Emergency Relief Fund. The fund has over $300,000 available for arts educators that we will be awarding via an application. That application is going to open August 10th. More information will be shared over the upcoming weeks, but please do share out this opportunity with anybody you think might be interested. We are grateful to be able to support the field in this way, and hope that you'll be able to just help us in sharing it out so we're able to reach as many people as possible. Thanks
you, for helping make that happen for teaching artists.
Yeah, my pleasure. Kinsey put the full press release that goes about.
Kinsey and Kim, thank you both.
We're going to close out now. We'll leave this open for 30 seconds in case people want to go back and save anything, although we are sending it all to you. So thank you so much and see you soon.
Oh, is it only NYC applicants for the teaching artist grant?
It is not only NYC. We have it will be defined within our application. It's New York City based, so meaning you have to be working or living in or around the New York City area. But it will be more specific information about that will be released early next week.
Thank you.
Great, and Valerie, it is on our our Twitter. Please feel free to retweet us. We're at NYCAIER. It's our Twitter handle. I'm sure I see Kinsey typing away, so yep, you're the best. Great, all right, we're gonna close things out. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a nice rest of your day.